Okay, so today we're installing the smart dimmer light switch. It's a light switch that lets you dim the brightness of your lights, and you can app control it, and if you have it, you can use it with Alexa and other voice assistants. And if you really don't want to connect it with the app, you can use it without Wi-Fi. So today we will be installing this and replacing my old dimmer switch. The tools that we will need are a Phillips screwdriver. You know it's a Phillips screwdriver when it has the 4 little faces on it. And then we would also need a flat end screwdriver. As you can see, it's just one line. And then our dimmer switch. Electrical gloves are handy for touching the wire without it poking you or electrocuting you. And then we also have our pliers. This will also help us move the wire around for some stubborn wires that are hard to bend. So now we have to turn off the power to our room so we can change the dimmer switch. Most houses have their breaker box outside. In this case, I do, but as you can see, the breaker box outside is for the sub panel or the AC, which we don't need. The next spot that I suggest you look is the garage or maybe a bedroom. So I was able to find the panel in the garage, but it says sub panel 2. So I'm suspecting that it's not here, but let's check it anyway. Usually it says what switch to turn off, but in my case, it says it right next to the switch. So this says bathroom, this says garage. None of these seem to be the one that does it for my room. My next suggestion will be to look in a bedroom, maybe the master bedroom or one of the other bedrooms for another panel. Since mine actually said sub panel 2, so we need to look for sub panel 1. I found the breaker panel in one of the bedrooms upstairs. So now we're gonna turn off the power to the room. And now that we found the panel, we need to turn off the right breaker to the right room. Sometimes there's labels like you see here, but sometimes they're kind of indescriptive. So I know that the room that we're gonna change is on the ground floor, so I'm pretty sure that's what the G stands for. And now we can guess and check by turning one of these off. But since I know that my room is the bottom one, I'm just gonna flick it like that. And we can check by checking if the power in the room is now gone. If it's not gone, then we can try other ones to see if the power turns off in that room. Now let's go check if the power turned off. Okay, so this is the old dimmer switch. And I'm gonna turn it on. As we can see, if I show you guys. As you can see, the light no longer turns on. And so that means there's no more power to the light switch. So now I'm going to turn this off, and we're going to get our flat end screwdriver. This, as you can see, is a line. This is also a line, which means that we need to use the flat end screwdriver. So we're just going to open this up and pull it out. Same thing here, twist and pull it out. Now remember to keep this screws in a separate place just so we can put the panel back. What we're going to do is just pry the panel forward and pop it out. Now we're going to have to grab our Phillips screwdriver. Remember the one with the 4 faces? As we can see, there's like a T shape on the screw. So we're just going to twist to the left and open the screw. This is a longer screw, so it might take a minute for the screw to come out completely. Once you see it jiggle a little bit, that means we can kind of pull it out. And as you can see, it kind of came out of the wall. We don't need to open this one completely because our new panel will have the screws. We're gonna unscrew this by turning it to the left. Once we feel it getting loose, we can push it forward. And as you can see, the panel's coming out. We're gonna pull this out a little bit so we can see all the wires. And this is how it looks right now, with the old dimmer switch pulled out. Now is a good time to get your electrical gloves. Let's just put those on. And I'm gonna pull out these cables too because we will need them later. trying to keep all the cables separate, sort of. Now when separating the cables, you can kind of see that this one's coming from the right side or from the back right, and this one's kind of coming straight down and this way, which kind of gives you the idea of which one's the ACL, which is coming from the breaker box, or the load cable, which is going to the lights. But more on that later. And this is known as our neutral cable, or the negative cable. This is our ground cable. The copper wire is always the ground cable, and it's green on the dimmer, but the copper that's coming out of the wall is always the ground cable. And a cool fact is if one of these cables touches the ground cable, it turns off the breaker to make sure the house doesn't electrocute itself or cut out the power to everything. So what we can do is just open the cable by twisting and pulling. Now, making sure to keep these cables separate so we don't confuse them, we're gonna open this one. This will be our power cable. And we're gonna open this one up by twisting and pulling. And there you go. Our old dimmer is now out. And now we're gonna open and twist this and pull it. Taking out the dimmer from the box looks like this. This pops right off and it shows this. This is our actual dimmer. And this will be the smart dimmer that we're installing. As you can see, they kind of labeled it for you. Now out of the box, the screws are kind of loose, and that's how we need it. But as you can see, some of the screws are kind of not loose or not loose at all. So we just need to open those up. We will not be using this because we're not having multiple switches, so we will just ignore this. This is our load cable, which means the power cable for the lights. This is the negative cable, which is the white cable. The copper cable will be going into the ground outlet with the green screw, and our power that's coming from the breaker box will be coming into the ACL outlet, which is the copper screw comes from the breaker box. Now we're gonna install the cables. So we're gonna kind of bend the cable and put it into the hole. You want to make sure it's all the way in there. Sometimes this plastic comes in the way, but you want to really push it in there. Now that it's all the way in, we will be using our Phillips. As we can see, there's 4 faces here, 4 faces here. So we will be closing this to tighten it. We will be going towards the right. All the way tight as can be. There you go. Now that that cable's in, we're gonna put both of our neutral cables into here. As you can see, this was twisted together. So we can either try to do it by hand, or we can use our pliers and twist it the opposite direction to untie the knot. Okay, keeping these 2 wires separate. I'm gonna do the same thing with this one. I'm just putting some tape on the wall because I noticed the dimmer was scratching it. Now, with both the neutral cables, we're gonna just plug them into the ACL, or if we check the other side, the silver screw. It doesn't matter what port you put it in, because as we can see, the ACN has 2 ports. Poking the other cable into the hole. And now from the top, making sure these are all the way in. Holding it here, I'm gonna use our Phillips screwdriver again. And we're gonna close the screw. As we can see, there's 2 copper cables mixed into this adapter to make it 1 cable. That's okay. We don't need to open this because all ground is ground. So if you don't have this connector connecting both into one, you can plug both into the outlet, but since for me, they were already converted into one, I'm just gonna put it into the G hole or the ground hole, making sure it goes all the way in. We're gonna use our Phillips screwdriver again and tighten this all the way. This leaves us with our last cable. This is our load cable, and this goes into this hole. I'm gonna have to move the cables a little bit because that wire is short, and so it's gonna be harder to play around with. As you can see, the screw's already open. We're gonna tap it so it gets out of spot, and now we're gonna take our load cable, put it into the hole, making sure until we hear that click. And now we're gonna take our Phillips screwdriver, making sure to tighten this all the way. Now, if you have followed the steps so far, your dimmer should have been wired properly. Professional electricians don't like to close the dimmer all the way without testing it, as if they wired it improfessionally or not correctly, they will have to open up everything. So they don't close the panel without testing it. We can test it by turning on the breaker again. So what we're gonna do is turn it back on. Now let's go check the dimmer again. So as we can see, when I turned on the breaker, the white light of the dimmer turned on, which means that we wired it correctly. So now that we know the dimmer has power, let's press it, and as you can see, the light turns on. So now we can close it. I'm gonna leave the lights off while I'm closing it because I know the power's still coming through the dimmer. So now you're gonna have to use some force. Push the dimmer into spot. Next, we're gonna use our Phillips screwdriver. And we're gonna poke this into the hole in the back. This is kind of hard to show on camera, but basically where the screw goes. We're gonna twist it just a little bit so it gets some grip. And before twisting it all the way, we're gonna make sure the screw goes into the hole in this one, in the back, and twist this one all the way. Making sure the alignment is straight as can be, I'm just gonna twist this one all the way and then fix the alignment from the top. To tighten this up, we're twisting to the right. Now to make it straight, we're gonna move this one just a little bit and we're gonna hold it there with one finger and twist to the right to lock in the screw. Okay, now let's just test to make sure the power is still running smoothly, because sometimes with all this pressure back there, the wires could get loose. As we know, they're not. Now we're going to put on the top panel. So there are two Phillips screws on the top and bottom. As we can see, it says top here. So this screws into the top. There's a little hole right here. So again, the alignment. This one doesn't really need too much alignment. Twist to the right to close it. Now that that's on, we get the front panel. If we flip it to the back, it says top. And so we're just gonna align it and click it. So I clicked the top corners, now the bottom corners. And there you go. Your dimmer is now installed.